around about a year ago, I became obsessed with the Chinese poets' experience. So many of them took the famous Kerju Chinese exam in order to become civil servants. I read this book by Ichisada Miyazaki, and I've a link in the description if you want to know more about the detail of the exam experience. I'm going to have a look at some pictures of what these exam centres look like. You can see here in this picture that it's rather overgrown and unkempt. That's because these were pictured during the late Qing dynasty, during the early 1900s in the Qing dynasty's death rows, and these places were abandoned. These exam centres were cities within themselves with their own gatehouses that you can see here, this huge gatehouse in the middle where the examiners would have stayed in their own walled enclosed quarters. And these shacks that you can see here, they look like shacks because they've been abandoned for a while, were the places where the students took the exams. Looking down from one of the gatehouses within the exam centre really gives an idea of how many thousands of people took this exam. You can see here are thousands of individual cubicles. Now they would have all looked more like the ones on the left because the ones on the right here have been damaged, obviously. These were tiny, like a beehive, isn't it? Tiny little cubicles, each one with a student in for days, desperately hoping that they could pass this exam. Their families having spent their whole lives from the age of little children all the way up to their mid-20s, hoping they could pass the exam to become a civil servant. They would have stayed in these cubicles for the entire exam session. Now, in some dynasties, these exams would have lasted days. A student would have had to take in their own food and provisions for these days. Now, what would those cubicles have actually looked like? This is what they would have looked like. Only 2 meters wide, without a curtain. So you can imagine, in rainy weather, if it's windy, you've got an ink and pen, you're at the back there, at the back wall, furiously writing. You've got to keep your ink dry. So people would have even had to bring their own curtains because they didn't have curtains for this exam. And they'd been staying in this cubicle without a window and without a bathroom. To go to the bathroom, they had to go to the door and request, get the attention of one of the guards, I suppose, at the end of the row that we saw earlier, would have been watching over them, making sure no one was cheating, and get their attention to take them to the bathroom where they would not be allowed to take anything with them, and they would be checked for their identity on the way back. Imagine that. 2 nights in a 2 meter squared cubicle. I suppose there are hotels like that in Japan. People only stay in those overnight. They're called capsule hotels. I've stayed in one, quite an interesting experience, because the actual place itself was lovely and clean, beautiful, lovely bathing area, lovely showering area. The capsules are spick and span, spotless and white, like almost like staying in a spaceship. This, I would have imagined, was cold and miserable, not a place that you would like to stay on a cold winter's night. There are many stories in Chinese traditions of people going mad in one of these cubicles for the desperation to pass the exam. You go through the 3 days, you do your very best at answering the questions, keep your ink dry, keep sane within that tiny little cubicle, and you pass the exam. Yes, you might imagine. Fantastic. I've passed the exam. But oh no, wait a minute. You're just now a xiang shi. You've just passed the provincial exam. You've got to now take the next exam. Even passing the first exam level was no guarantee of a civil servant's position. You might have to pass 2 or 3 of these exams in order to guarantee your future. That's another maybe 5 or 6 days in one of those poxy little cubicles. So much for exams nowadays, eh? If you want to know more about Chinese exams, the Kerju, the ancient civil servants exam, I've done more lengthy videos on this, talking about what kind of questions are in it, what was the exam about, and how to pass it. Links in the description here. Signing off from a room quite a lot bigger than one of these exam cubicles. Mr. Silent, thank you very much for listening. 再见.